Hi, my name is Sandy Marr. I was born May and I grew up in the Marr area. My dad is Gidja. He's from Warman community, which was Turkey Creek, and he was born at Texas Downs Station in the Kimberley. Thus, his name is George Paul Texas May, and his mother and siblings were placed at Moore River Native Settlement. His older brother was Fred May, who married Florrie Hart from Pinjarra, and she had a twin, Auntie Dulcie Hart from Pinjarra. And my dad married Lily Burgess, who was born at Bamboo Creek in Marble Bar, and her father is non-Aboriginal and her mother was Aboriginal. My mum, Lily Burgess, and Jack Brayside were locked up in the Marble Bar police station because I don't know where they thought they'd run away to because they were very young. My uncle's name is Brayside because he was born at Brayside Downs Station. My mum's dad worked on the tin mines at Bamboo Creek, and we don't know a lot about him except that he did join the army. From there they were rounded up like a herd of cattle, my dad in Wyndham, my mum in Port Hedland. They were put on the boat, the Kalinda, and sent down to Moore River Native Settlement. My dad's younger sister was Eva, and she married a Filipino, Lou Carpio, and then they lived around the Mora area working on farms as well. My dad, when he left Moore River Native Settlement at a very young age, worked on farms. They had training of looking after animals and vegetables and orchards and milking cows and etc. at Moore River Native Settlement, but they were horrendous conditions there, and the girls weren't allowed to mix with the boys even though they were related. My mum was trained in domestic duties. They had limited schooling, but I am ever so grateful to both my parents for instilling the importance of having a good education because it will open more doors for you. So my first school was Bindi Bindi Primary School. Then my next school was Coomberdale Primary School. I'm the eldest of 4 children. I have a half sister we had the same mother but different fathers. Her father was a white farmer who actually raped my mother while she was looking after the children and doing domestic duties. We do not know who he is, and she was placed in Sister Kate's. When my mum and dad got married, my dad got her out of Sister Kate's, and I was born on the 25th of August 1951. Next year, when I turn 70, I'm going on the journey to find all my mum's family because my young brother Kevin has done a lot of research and found a lot of my dad's family in the Kimberley and the Pilbara. And as I said, we grew up in Noongar country, so we don't know any different. And I've been accepted in the communities, Noongar communities, because I let them know my links and where we're from. It's important that the virtual reality is shown to the younger generation so they know the hardships that their grandparents and great-grandparents had to put up with, because when they closed the Moore River Native Settlement, it was then taken over by Methodist Church, which was then called Magumba Mission, which was the year that I was born, and I had cousins and that were placed in there, plus friends, and my dad's brother worked on the at Magumba Mission as well. So we've got close connections with it because as a child we always went back to visit them and that. So For me, being involved in the virtual reality for Moore River Native Settlement, or Magumba Mission as well, is to pass the knowledge on to my grandkids, because once I pass on all the knowledge and information and the stories that I have, unless it's written down, will be lost unless someone decides to take it upon themselves to write a book. So it's been a privilege for me to be part of the Moore River Native Settlement reference group as a survivor, and I'm doing it for my mum and dad, to pay my respects to them, and also for my grandchildren. So hopefully when they watch or see this, or any of my young families, the Kalindas out there, will know and remember and be proud of their culture. Okay, I remember this story about what my dad had said, because they never shared much with us until before my dad passed away, when he got very sick with his diagnosis of diabetes. So by then my husband had passed away. I was living in Newdigate, and it allowed me time to go up to visit my dad, and he yarned with me about how this Japanese plane came over Magumba or Moore River Native Settlement. They could hear the gunfire, rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat. So they were out in the bush, and there was just a log going across this creek or river, and they all just scattered across there and just hit the dirt because they thought they were going to die. And Dad says there was another guy that was there that was visually impaired, but he soon made it across there as well by himself. And the other stories are, there's horrendous stories that have happened, that they weren't treated nicely. When people came to visit them, they were all dressed up and they were served nice food and that. But for Christmas, they were lucky to even have a Christmas lunch, and they just had fruit then and bread and jam. So, they had a lot of hardships, and they were put in the boob, which is a tin shack, that they were punished with no air, no food, no water. They had black trackers there that would find them and bring them back. Thus the story of Rabbit Proof Fence. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. And that did happen. It is a true story, but there was a lot more that wasn't told about the days in the mission. So they weren't allowed to speak their language. My dad could speak several languages. They weren't allowed to practice their ceremonies, their corroborees. Remember, a lot of these people came from the Norwest, and where our traditional law and ceremonies were still practiced, and they weren't allowed to speak their language because they were told it was the devil's language, and they had to learn English, and also they had to go to church and pray all the time. And we are spiritual people as Aboriginal people, and our connection to the land and to our people, the animals and the environment is so strong that they still had that, so they knew how to survive, what plants they could eat, which were poisonous, where to get water and all of those sorts of things from. And the one thing I'm ever so thankful for my parents is instilling, supporting us in getting a good education, because my daughter Bobby Lee, who lives in Canberra, is doing her PhD this year, and she is doing that, which I'm so proud of, and her grandparents would have been ever so proud of her doing this, but of course had passed on. And yes, and my passions are education and my culture. I've worked in the education department for several years, and I'm early childhood trained because I went to Kindergarten Teachers College in West Perth. I had an experience that I want to share about when I went to see a footy match or carnival that was played over at Rottnest at Wodjamuk, and I'd never been there before. A friend and myself went across there on the ferry. When I stepped off the ferry onto that dirt, all the hairs on my body stood up. I didn't know or realise why, but all our ancestors are buried there, a lot of them, because they were sent to prison at Rottnest Island, and there's a lot of unmarked graves, and it was the spirits of my ancestors telling me that they were there. And I don't think I ever want to visit Rottnest again because of that experience. And on that, with the people being brought down in chains and everything to Rottnest Island as prisoners for the most minor reasons, the other thing is that a lot of the people that are around this area in Perth are from up the Pilbara and the Kimberley. And when I talk to the children at schools, I tell them, find out where your mob come from, because they may not necessarily be Noongars from Noongar country. They're from other countries, even out to Kalgoorlie and that. So a lot of people have been reconnecting now with who are their families, and some have even married their cousins and relatives, but they didn't know that at the time. So we're looking at colonisation and what the displacement and the trauma and everything else that has affected us, and it's intergenerational trauma. I consider I'm a strong person. I've been through a lot of grief and loss, having lost my son at the age of 12, my husband 2 years later, and I do consider I'm a strong black woman. But with all the trauma that my parents had gone through and that, they had no counselling, no nothing, which is available now for us through, one of the groups I've used is Yorgum Counselling Services, and I think my parents were very strong to be able to get through a lot of that.